piece of it will really enable an end consumer to understand, oh yes, this was actually produced or this was actually signed by that creator or that publisher. So it's really this kind of major unlocking mechanism. AI seems to be the place where it's really coming to the forefront, I think, in our opinion, and where these emerging techs really can start to play together very nicely. And that's what we got to with Verify, is creating this space for a publisher to sign their content, to stand behind it. It's bound to this real-world owner, allowing consumers to confirm that that piece of content was published by them. And then the second piece of that is the licensing mechanism. But when you get to that IP piece, this blockchain and a binding of content to a real-world owner is so powerful.
Amazing. By the way, this, again, another example of why we have such a great panel today, and got very well-rounded thought of answers around publishing.
And let's say something. I just want to dig a little on what David is saying, though, because I think one thing that I think is really interesting about my exploration of Verify is when you look at a piece of content, you're actually looking at 10 pieces of content, right? So any image that's published within any caption, you're really breaking it apart, which I think is an important piece of what we're talking about.
Totally. I mean, a piece of content, whether that's in the form, the kind of the broader sense, if that's an article that's published by a publisher, that includes text, that might include video and images. All of those individual pieces of content are being signed on chain, and so it allows you to create those customizable opportunities for each different piece. Your images or your video might be important to one buyer or to one AI platform, and your text might be very important to a different one. And so we break that all apart. Each of those different things are signed on chain, and you can verify that those pieces of content did originate from the source that it says it did.
Amazing. So just to follow up, and Stu, this is a question to you on the regulatory framework, legal framework. What should be the thought process for regulators, right? Especially when it comes down to striking the balance between regulation to ensure the safe usage of AI, but also make sure that you don't hinder the development and innovation of AI technology.
Yeah, so I think the regulatory environment for AI, as it affects this world, is going to be different than we've seen in the financial services space. Maybe I'm getting hopeful. So I think in the financial services space, you're fitting into a regulatory scheme that existed already. You're dealing with regulators who this is what they do for a living, and they're trying to figure out how blockchain technology fits into their regulatory world, and they often don't like it. Again, for better or for worse, in a lot of cases for worse. I think in the AI space, it's sort of uncharted territory for everybody, and they're trying to figure out, what that means. What I'm hopeful is going to happen, and we just saw this now, I guess, 2 weeks ago, roughly, a week and a half ago in Colorado. Colorado, the first state to pass a comprehensive AI Act, and it deals with what they call high-risk AI systems, which are AI systems that are used to make decisions that people probably care more about. So educational decisions, financial decisions, health decisions, employment decisions. But it's a disclosure regime really more than anything. Now you could argue that there's so much disclosure required that it's going to sort of shape maybe how you develop these systems, but hopefully not. So I think what I'm hopeful for is, as opposed to telling people what you can't do, other than maybe in the area of deep fakes, which I think is a real issue, it's more so just letting people know what's going on, letting people know that AI was used, doing risk assessments, having some degree of human intervention, kind of policing it. But I think it's going to be a tough balance. But I think I'm hopeful that it's going to be less of a oppositional regulatory framework than we've seen in a lot of areas in the crypto space. So I'm hoping AI goes off in a little bit of a different direction. But it remains to be seen. I'll just say one final thing on it. The biggest worry I think a lot of us have is that everybody's going to have their own AI reg. It's going to be every state, there might be some at the federal level, every country, and navigating that if a global product is going to be a challenge. maybe good for lawyers, but not good for the industry. So I think that's a story that's still unfolding as well.
Great. And then David, from your perspective, what do you think would be a path forward for creators to start monetizing using both blockchain and AI?
Yeah, I mean, I'll talk specifically about Verify just because that's been our one of our real strategies to approaching it. And when we did start to look at this kind of rise of AI immediately, you identified those two opportunity sets. The first one we talked about deepfake, and it's more than just deepfake. It's misattribution, miskontexting, taking a real image and saying it was from a different time, and then that second piece is this licensing capability. And we saw the AI platforms taking content, taking IP, using it, presenting it, transforming it, and doing it without permission from IP owners. And I think there's a little bit, I would say the conversation has shifted a little bit where you say, okay, publishers have two different ways that they're approaching it. One, very public lawsuits, and see how those play out in court. And then there's other publishers and content creators that are going after capitalizations with the AI platforms, and deals continue to pop up, weekly around those. And so Verify really is a little bit through, forging a path through the middle of those two things. It's not valuing all of your content, your crown jewels today for where we don't necessarily know where AI is going and where these different platforms are going to be taking it. The technology is moving so quickly that you don't want to value everything, in this kind of old deal today, in our opinion. And so, through Verify, you can create these customizable terms and conditions, these customizable use cases. We do it, via smart contract, and so that you can dictate the way, you can put some teeth into the way that your content is going to be used. And so it is open source. I do encourage everybody, verifymedia.com, where you can learn more and read about, read our dev docs around it. But you can actually create that pathway for you to monetize your content, and to the regulatory and legal conversation. There are some headwinds that these platforms are going to be up against and are looking at, and actually licensing the content in a real way is one path forward. I think we kind of see this a little bit like the Napster to Spotify or Napster to Apple Music moment where we've provided a legitimate access point to professional journalism. So there really is no excuse to take it from somewhere else. And so I think providing that is going to be it's going to start to shape the way that the content is consumed by the downstream users.